Hi, Jim here, just dropping in before this week's episode to tell you about my latest movie, The Apocalypse Box. It's a horror film and I'd love for you to check it out. If you go to apocalypsebox.co.uk, you can find all the links on where you can watch the movie. Right, let's get on with this week's episode. Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast, career advice from people in the business. This week, I'm speaking to director Josh Forbes. Josh started his career making music videos. He went on to direct a horror film called Contracted Phase 2, and he directed a film for Shudder called Destroy All Neighbours. He's also directed a documentary called Gallagher. I talked to Josh about music videos and how potentially that might be a good avenue for people leaving university or film school. So as opposed to doing short films, maybe putting your energy into music videos and seeing where that leads. We also talked about his first horror feature, Contracted Phase 2, how that came about, what the shoot was like. And we talked about Destroy All Neighbours, the film he directed for Shudder. And I asked him about working with Betty White. Enjoy. Okay, so talk to me about how you got into film.
How I got into film, it's interesting. I went to film school, and did that whole thing, wasted a lot of time and money. Um, and it was one of those things where, like, I think my taste exceeded my ability at the time, where I was like, oh man, I'm in. I watched every movie Quentin Tarantino's recommended, like, this will be easy. And anyway, so did film school, and one of the big things that I focused on was music videos. Even in film school, it was just I saw the lay of the land, and I saw people making these like really expensive short films, and I'm like, there's no way I can do that. Like, I just don't have the money. But you know, I saw the stories of people like Spike Jonze, who at the time I didn't realize was like from a wealthy family. But I saw him, like, he's making skateboard videos with his friends, which then led to music videos, which then led to movies. So I was like, okay, well, I know music. I know people in bands. Let's start with that. And so I started doing, even in college, like my senior project was a music video, which is funny because, like, everybody else had like really depressing, or like a depressing video, or short film, or like, you know a drug deal gone bad, or an abortion or something. And mine was like about a about a guy who like catches on fire and does a stop, drop, and roll dance, and then it catches on at the school dance. And it's like really silly and visual and crazy, and like my teachers didn't know what to do with it. But anyway, it was really through music videos. I mean, from there I took on a bunch of crappy jobs. I was a substitute teacher. I worked at Starbucks. Like, I worked at the Harley Davidson t-shirt factory. Like, I had all these just like completely shit jobs. And then eventually, yeah, I'm trying to, I don't know how deep you want to go, but
No, that's a good intro.
yeah,
And it's interesting you talk about maybe your style not fitting in because when I was looking at your stuff, it's quite a hard style to define. It
yeah.
certainly has got its own kind of like energy to it. How would you define your style?
Like, enthusiastic, hopefully like unpretentious. Um, I think I'm always trying to tap into my like inner fifth grader or something, my inner, whatever age that is, like 10-year-old or something.
Yeah.
Um, 11. I should know because I have kids, but just I love really playful stuff. I mean, like my movie Destroy All Neighbors is like really gross and horror-y, but it's still like, as much as I try, like I can't go like Ari Aster dark. It's like there's always, um but I don't know, like I've always wanted to follow in the footsteps of folks like Joe Dante or Sam Raimi, or the Zucker brothers, who did, the Airplane guys. And I don't know. Yeah, there's kind of like I hope, what I lack in technical ability, I make up for in charm. I don't know.
Nice. And talking about the music videos, so that's not a bad shout actually as a route because, like you say, a lot of people do short films, and I've judged a few short film festivals, and sometimes you do tend to see the same kind of stories over and over again, whereas
Yeah,
music videos probably gives you a much wider range of stuff. What would be for somebody sort of wanting to start doing music videos? What would be tips for that? What things have you learned doing those?
I mean, I guess there's two parts to it, because there's my advice as an old guy now, and then there's what I would probably advise, as somebody who's coming up. I mean, my initial advice would just be, find a band, find people who are making things, and team up with them. I mean, that was the thing with music videos for me, was I'm like, okay, well, if I can find a song that I like, and a band that's cool, like I'm halfway there, like, okay, that part's feels professional. And then I'm kind of piggybacking off of them, and then also hopefully piggybacking off of their audience. So I guess, but now I feel like the landscape is a little bit different, but maybe it's more accessible. I feel like a lot of bands or musicians or whatever are doing a lot more like social content, or they'll shoot things that are sort of designed to be played on TikTok in little like 10-second increments, which is insane to me. But I mean, I think the biggest thing is just find people who are making cool stuff, and then see how you fit in. See if you can donate your services, sort of thing.
Would you say that, because I've looked at some of the music videos you've done, and again, they're very much your style. With all of those music videos, was that you pitching an idea and going, "Oh, we should do this," or did they come to you and go, "Oh, what do we? We've got an idea."
It's mostly been me coming up with the idea. I mean, I think there are a couple instances, like the Walk the Moon video. The singer Nick, like, he had written this totally insane treatment. I mean, insane in the best way, I guess I'd say, but like, is also incredibly ambitious, and there's just like a lot of stuff for 3 minutes. And that one was fun, because I got to sort of like take all of his ideas and sort of synthesize it into something that was actually shootable. But yeah, most of the time, the basic gist of it is like, you get sent a song and a budget, and maybe some notes like, hey, don't do anything on the beach, because their last video is on the beach, or something, little like. Or sometimes they'll have like a hyper specific thing that doesn't even make sense. It's like, oh, we want whatever, we want a Mad Men vibe. It's like, okay, like, what are they? You seem to know what you want. Like, why don't you just tell me and I'll do it? But yeah. But a lot of it was would come down to me submitting the idea, and hopefully they liked it more than the other directors that submitted. It's kind of great. Like, at least when I was coming up, I'm sure it's even worse now. Like, it's just such a cattle call. It's just like, I don't have no idea how many people are submitting for these jobs, but it's like, I bet you like with commercials, it's like 2 or 3 people, but with music videos, it's like, I feel like 10 is the minimum. There could be like 30 people, 50 people writing on these things. In the hope of getting a budget of $5,000 or something. But yeah, but that, but it was really fun for me to do that, and fun to work the creative juices. And what's funny too is that, like, a lot of times, I mean, a lot of the times I'm really trying to like hit their target, like, trying to predict like what is it that they're going to want. And sometimes that would work, but sometimes I would, I'd either be feeling so good or feeling so bad that I would just say like, all right, screw it. I'm going to write this thing because I just enjoyed fleshing this idea out. And I don't care if it gets picked up. Like, it's just fun for me to write this idea. And a lot of times those would be the ones that would sell. Because I think I'm hoping that there was like some level of freedom, or is more creative, or But I guess for every time that I've done that, and there's probably been like 10 that they were like, what is this?
What is he doing? But then I suppose that's your talent, isn't it? It's coming up with those ideas, and if they connect with it, then obviously you're going to enjoy it filming it, rather than it being a job where you've got to turn up and do something that's just not your style at all. Yeah. So how did music videos then lead on to? So I got down that you did a horror movie, Contracted Phase 2.
Yeah. So my first movie is called Contracted Phase 2, and as the more that time goes by, the more like kind of proud I am of it. But like at the time, it was kind of a rough go. I mean, it was. It came about through a friend of a friend. It was like literally an email that was like, "Hey, do you want to do a zombie movie? A low budget zombie movie?" And I'm like, "Yes." And send me the script, and I read it, and I got like saw the word zombie on page 2 or something, and I was like, "Okay, yes, like of course, yes, like let's figure this out." But it was a sequel to a movie called Contracted that was made by this guy Eric England, and it was very like the original one is very much like a mumblecore kind of like very lo-fi, low key, like this woman, sleeps with a guy, where she gets like whatever. She has an encounter with a man and then contracts this disease. And then over the course of the first film, she's kind of, there's like these body horror moments where it's like, what's happening to her body? And then, I'll spoil it. At the end, she becomes a zombie, like the very end. So it's like the whole premise of that movie is, hey, it's all the stuff, let's tell a zombie story, like all the stuff that usually editors cut out. But anyway, it was like pretty well, well received and like very artsy. And so then the sequel, like, I guess they had a fallout with Eric, but I don't know. It was a really fun experience. Even though it was like, by the time I said yes, we had like a week or two to shoot. I mean, a week or two to prep. And I don't know, it was pretty awesome because like, because of all my experience doing music videos and commercial stuff, like I wasn't scared. Like there was like nothing they could throw at me that I was like, oh, we can't work with this. Like I was very used to like, all right, let's figure this out. But then also it's kind of nice to sort of like get your first one out of the way. So when I did my second film, Destroy All Neighbors, like all those jitters were gone because it's like, okay, I know what to expect. I mean, it's interesting, like when you're making a feature, like one of the things that was so different for me was just realizing like what a marathon it is, like what a war of attrition, which normally when you're doing a especially low budget music videos, you're just, putting the foot on the gas, just complete adrenaline, like just, get everything out in one day and then you just crash. But like when you're making a feature, like you can't afford to do that. And so, so that was really interesting.
It's funny you said that about it being a long war, the feature.
Yeah.
Because the other thing I find is, so with a music video, everything you're shooting is the cool stuff, isn't it? It's kind of like the eye candy stuff. Whereas on a feature, there'll be stuff where you've got to shoot something quite dull, that's maybe a joining scene or something that's just on the schedule that you just have to get done. I know you shouldn't treat it like that. Everything should be, but yeah, it can weigh you down a little bit. So how did Contracted 2 lead on to Destroy All Neighbours?
I mean, it didn't, but I mean, obviously it did. But
what was the time gap between the two?
I want to say like 7 or 8 years.
Really? Oh, quite a big gap then. Yeah, I
think so. I mean, I'd have to do the math, but it felt like a long amount of time. Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't think the movie made as big of a splash as I thought it would, or I think it's just the way that the industry works. It's like, unless you make like It Follows or some movie that just like really breaks out, it's like, it's good for your career and it's good, it's a good stepping stone, but it's like, it's not the thing that blows you up. But yeah, I mean, like after that happened, I feel like even while we were working on it, I was probably working on the script for Destroy All Neighbors. I probably have like 10 scripts that I'm, that are at various stages of development at any given time. And so that one, that was the one that kept coming back, like even as time went on, and we'd send the script around to different companies or different actors, and like didn't get a good response. I kept thinking of quitting. I'm like, oh, well, I should probably pivot and like write something else. But I just kept going back to that script because I was like, no, this is really good. Like, I think this will make a really good movie. And eventually we got it to Jonah Ray, who's on Mystery Science Theater at the time. And then he long story, but like we ended up getting to Alex Winter from Bill and Ted, and like he came on and he really added fuel to the fire. And before long we ended up getting it to Shudder, the horror streamer. And yeah, I mean, even then we had a meeting with them, and they were like, "This is amazing. We're gonna get our checkbook out right now." Ha ha ha. I feel like it took like a year from that phone call, or that Zoom or whatever. But that's just part of the business. It's like there's, I think they were shuffling money around and like different. I don't know. Like you're always up to the whims of these companies that are always in flux. Like there's always people coming in and out.
So, what was the sort of budget comparables on the first one and Destroy All Neighbours?
I think Neighbours had like 10 times the budget, but that still wasn't that much. It was I think the first. I mean, I guess it's been long enough. I can say I think Contracted 2 was like around like 200 grand or something. It was like we were really squeezing blood from a stone. And then Neighbours, I think, was under 2. It's like somewhere between 1 and 2 million. But also we shot Destroy All Neighbours like in LA. We did it all union, so like everyone was paid properly, and all the good things that that you're supposed to do. I mean, there's part of me that kind of wonders like how much better would the movie be if we had done it non-union? Like I have friends who've done like non-union features, and like they're able to sort of stretch the money and get away with more. And but I think the reality is that like if we had done it non-union, like there's a lot of actors who wouldn't have been able to show up, because we probably would be doing it somewhere, like in Canada or some, upstate New York or something like that. So ultimately it worked out, but it was definitely frustrating because, again, coming from music videos, I very much have this attitude of like, well, let's just get the camera and go out and go do it, But it's like, well, no, like this guy's rate is this per day, and this is, at this point we have to eat lunch and whatever. And I'm like, okay, rules. But obviously, like, workers' rights is important.
Yes, workers' rights is important. So would you say, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who'd love the idea of even pitching to Shudder. So do you think the Alex Winter connection's what got you in the door with that film, or were you already talking to them before that?
I mean, Alex definitely helped. But it's funny is it came down to Joe Lynch. I don't know if you know Joe Lynch. He just did a movie called Suitable Flesh, but he also did a movie called Everly and Wrong Turn 2. I don't know. He's like he's done a bunch of stuff, and he's just an awesome, enthusiastic, like just whatever, just fan of movies and just a cool guy. And he knew Jonah, and he read the script, and he put in a good word for us, basically. Like he handed it to them and was like, "Look, guys, you got to make this movie." And so yeah, you have to just get a Joe Lynch.
Yeah, it's easy. We'll find one.
I've just been so tenacious and persistent about it. Like it was eventually going to happen, but but it was tough because like Alex has agents, and like we went through all of those channels, and we kind of came up empty. But luckily, it was a time when Shudder was like. I feel like they had some big batch of financing or something. I think that's my suspicion. Like you know, because I think that year they were making like a lot of movies, which was awesome. And it had this feeling of almost like a Roger Corman sort of, I don't know, like it was pretty amazing because it's like it had this feeling of like, hey, here's the money, go make the movie, make sure it's, you know, at least this many minutes and it's in focus, and you know, come back. You know, I mean, the execs like showed up on set and stuff, but it was very much like there was so much creative freedom. You know, it was really, really cool.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that actually, how much input they have, and did the script get tinkered with at all, or you know, how much sort of input do they have?
They didn't. I think they had maybe they had a few minor notes, but I think any of the tinkering was just done by us. You know, it was like, okay, you know, we've submitted the script, and they're like, cool, let's do it. And then, you know, especially Jonah and I, like we would just sit and like run through the script. We just sit at a diner for like, I feel like for weeks. I don't know, just like off and on. Like we would sit and like, you know, read through it and like, all right, how do we punch this joke up? Like, is this, you know, is this clear? Is this confusing? Like, oh, how can we reconnect things? You know, how do we set something up that gets paid off later? You know, and really had a chance to really like to hone the script. And then we would. I know at some point he sent it to Kumail, and I think Kumail might have had some jokes to throw in. Or we also, you know, we did like, you know, readings with the cast and stuff, and like, you know, reading it out loud, and then like, okay, well, what else? You know, what's a funny name for a band or whatever? Like, you know, so it was very very collaborative process. Like, I feel like it felt like maybe more like what it's like working on like a comedy TV show or something. I don't know. Like I loved having, getting to work with Jonah and Alex and like, you know, and the three writers too, like, Jared Logan and Mike Benner and Charlie Piper, to just like bounce ideas off of. And it was nice because there wasn't any ego really. It was just best idea wins. Like, you know, so we were all kind of in it together.
So, can you tell me where people can watch it, and also give me the pitch for it? What's the story?
Okay, yeah, you can watch it on Shudder.
Of course,
Or
yeah, silly me.
yeah, you can, or you know, if you don't have Shudder, I mean, I think Shudder does like a free trial week or something like that, if you want to be sneaky about it. Or it's also, I think you can rent it on anywhere you can rent movies, like Amazon or whatever. But the pitch is, I mean, it's a horror comedy about a progressive rock musician played by Jonah Ray, and his whole goal in life is to finish this album. He has this album that he feels like, once I finish this album, then my life will be complete, or whatever. Like he's like putting his life on hold until this album's done. And one day, a neighbor moves in next door, and it's played by Alex Winter, and he's in prosthetics. He's like this crazy looking, you know, monster dude, sort of. I mean, he kind of looks like a like a dwarf in the Lord of the Rings or something. You know, like there's just something uncanny about him. And that guy starts making a bunch of noise, and Jonah's character, you know, starts blaming his lack of focus on the neighbor, and he ends up confronting him. This is all in the trailer. He confronts him and accidentally kills him. And so instead of just calling the police, he starts to dispose of the body, and then things go from there. Where you know, the neighbor's head comes back to life and starts talking to him, and you know, so it's sort of like a weird comedy of errors where it's like he's trying to cover this thing up, and it just gets messier and messier.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen the trailer, and I will put a link to the trailer and where people can actually watch it in the description. Obviously, I've seen the trailer. I'm definitely going to watch the film, and it's got a lot of prosthetics in it, a lot of blood flying everywhere. Someone maybe who's going into their first feature film, and it involves a lot of prosthetics, what would be your tips to them?
I mean, pre-planning is huge. I mean, on this one, I worked with Gabe Bartalos was our like makeup guy or our like prosthetics guy or effects guy. And Gabe is amazing. He worked on like the Basket Case movies and Frankenhooker and like, you know, he made a zombie horse for Zack Snyder's Land of the Dead. Like, I don't know. He's just like, he did a bunch of stuff with, I don't know if you know Matthew Barney, who was like Bjork's husband for a time. I don't, maybe they still are together, but like he did this thing called the Cremaster series. Anyway, Gabe's just like a legend. And, you know, so it was a lot of working stuff out with him, you know, in his studio, like us acting it out and us, you know, like there's a lot of with our movie. There's a lot of logistics, like you know, like 70% of the movie, Alex is just ahead, you know, or maybe half the movie, Alex is just ahead, being carried around and being set on couches and shelves, and you know, and like as dumb as it is, it's like you have to plan all that stuff out and sketch it out, and you know, there's just like things that like a lot of these aren't just off the shelf remedies. It's like, okay, how do we figure this out? Like we had you know, we have like a skeleton woman, and it's like, all right, like how do we do this, you know? And he came up with this idea of like having one of his assistants, this guy Ben, like in a green screen suit, like with the skeleton kind of attached to him, so he's like kind of moving, you know. So I mean, that's a big thing is planning. You know, I mean, it is interesting. Like we really did try to go as practical as we could with like the blood and stuff like that. Um, but you quickly realize when you're doing something like that, like why people are moving more towards digital, because it's like it's such a mess. It's a mess. It's a pain in the ass. It's like, you know, a lot of times you just have one shot. It's like this is the time when this stuff is spraying everywhere, and like you better hope the camera's on. You know.
Yeah, definitely. Although
Um,
those are the fun, they're the fun takes to do, and they're really. I find like I've done it before. We've had a whole day of really boring. Again, I've got to stop saying this to make it sound like all the films are boring. But a dialogue scene. You've got a dialogue scene. Dialogue scene. Everyone's waiting for the blood to come out. And it is an energizer on set, isn't it? Because you're, as you say, even if it's one take, you're just like, this is going to be great. Got to make sure this works, and it's so
yeah.
exciting when it happens. It's a ball like clearing it
or
all up.
or we have a moment where Alex like basically like barfs on Jonah, but it's like just an endless stream of like crap or whatever. And I mean, that was like we got one shot at this, but we like, I mean, my phone is full of these like test videos that the effects guys did. Like they had this big tube and like they filled it with stuff. Then they would like open the tube and like, you know, so we're like, okay, we're trying to figure out like what consistency is right and what, you know, oh, that's too lumpy. Oh, that's too, you know, which I love all that stuff. Like it's, you know, again, it's like my inner, you know, 12-year-old or whatever. It's like, I just, you know, the more that I can get away with doing crazy stuff like this and call it my job, I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd add a tip to that, which would be if you're doing anything with blood, you've got to backlight it. You've got to backlight that liquid so it shows up. And it ridiculously, that tip came from on my graduation film was, and I'm a bit similar to you at film school, as we'd call it at uni over here. My graduation piece was just bananas. It was set in space. It was aliens. It was that kind of stuff. Everyone else is doing these kind of Hitchcock style things. We did this big alien thing. We had a big bit where the alien kills someone, blood goes everywhere, and the director Ken Russell
Uh-huh.
lived in the New Forest. He came to all the sets of the films that were being made, and he went,
Oh,
"Oh,
wow.
the blood, you need to backlight that." So he gave us the tip, and we were like, "Oh,
Whoa.
okay." And yeah, we put the light behind it, and suddenly you see it all, see all the blood. So that's where that tip came from.
Wow. That's insane.
Yeah, that was a cool one.
That's,
um, so my next one was going to ask you about. So you got a documentary called Gallagher coming out now, and I didn't know much about Gallagher because I don't think it's as big. He's as big over here in the UK. So tell me a little bit about that.
yeah. I mean, I can't imagine anybody there knows who he is.
Yeah.
Because he's just like a very quintessentially American comedian from the 80s. He was this guy whose whole, like, his big shtick was that he would smash watermelons. And so he's kind of been maligned. He's been a punchline for years. You know, comedians would just they would just make fun of him, or, you know, because it seems so stupid. But my entry point was just like, you know, I watched this stuff as a kid, and I'm like, no, I think he's a lot smarter than people are making him, you know, that people are giving him credit for. And so that was kind of that was sort of the first thought, was like, okay, like, can I take this guy who everybody's sort of written off as like a hack, or like, you know, towards the end of his life, like he got criticized for, you know, kind of having like racist or homophobic jokes or whatever, like, which I don't condone. You have to say that. But I was just thinking, like, this guy's been overlooked, and I think he deserves a second examination. And also just, he's just a crazy, wild character. It's just like even if he like didn't do comedy or anything, if he was just some guy, he's just fascinating. And so, yeah, I followed him around for about 7 years, off and on. He would quit the project, and then he would come back on, and then quit, and, like, you know, it's very contentious. Maybe a little bit like the Ginger Baker documentary. I don't know if you've seen that, about the drummer from Cream. Anyway, so it was very so part of the movie is me trying to make the movie, and but yeah, I think it's really funny, and it's sad but sweet, and I feel like ultimately uplifting. I don't know. I think, yeah, it was a pretty big undertaking.
Did you know that it would be those things when you started, or were they things that kind of came out slowly and you sort of shaped?
Right. I mean, there was definitely a lot of shaping going on, because it's like, you know, I mean, he has since he passed away during the filming of the movie, and so that kind of, you know, helped us find the end of the film. But you know, when he was still alive, it's like, and you're always like, okay, what is the story? What is the arc? You know, especially if he's just like shutting off access. It's like, okay, well, I guess this is the movie now. But thematically, like, I think all those things were kind of in my head from the beginning. It's like, I just have such a heart for, I don't know, for like carnies, like carnival people, like traveling comedians, and there's just something so like beautiful and tragic, and, I don't know, human and amazing about, I don't know, just like the idea of, like, you know, a traveling Shakespeare company going, you know, across the country, to like popping up different places. Like, I really saw him as kind of like a traveling poet, or like a prophet or something. I mean, of course, what he's talking about is, like, you know, why do we drive on parkways and park on driveways, or I don't know, like, you know, like, if our knees bent the other way, what would chairs look like? You know, like, just like goofy stuff, but like, anyway, there's just something really, really, that's what I really wanted to capture. I think I was able to, but it was tough, because like I wanted, like, his whole thing is watermelon, so I'm like, let's get beautiful chef's table style slow-mo shots of him, like, running his hand over the watermelons and stuff, and like, he would have none of it. You know,
Although
that was one of the
I
reasons
did
why.
see the what did look cool was in the trailer there's like a slow mo shot of him hitting one with a sledgehammer on fire. So he did do some
Yeah,
stuff by the looks of things.
yeah, which I which is amazing. Like, we didn't shoot that stuff. I wish I had, but you know, I still think it's awesome to be able to have in the movie. And but again, like, you know, with my music video background or whatever, like, I always have an eye for those bigger images, like those stronger images. Like, how do we, um, you know, that's what's tough when you're doing a documentary, because it's like on the fly, and like, you're kind of getting what you can. But I always kind of have an eye towards that. Like, how do we make this larger than life?
And then I was going to ask you, and on one of your music videos,
Yeah.
you've got a music video with Betty White in it. I think it's kind of like an advert slash music video. What is Betty like White like in person? Please don't ruin it and say she's horrible. What is
Oh,
she
she's
like?
amazing. She was the sweetest person ever. So sweet. I mean, at the time, she was pretty frail and old, you know. But like when the camera was off, she was like pretty mellow. But the second the camera came on, she just like sprung into life, and just really funny, like just a funny improviser, like just really playful with everybody. Yeah,
I feel
she
like
was
she
just
fits in well with your style. I think.
yeah, yeah,
She definitely
yeah, yeah,
does.
yeah.
Hope you enjoyed that episode. If you'd like to hear from more industry professionals, how they got into the business and how you can do the same, or you just want to listen to some cool stories from movie sets around the world, then please do subscribe to the Honest Filmmaker podcast.